one where I watch videos in the background and leave them on and then can't find the tab where I put them. And I'm like, where are you? But yeah. Hi Lynn. Hi Cat Wizard. Hi Cosmo. Hi everybody. Happy Wednesday. I hope the day was restful and productive for y'all. Yesterday was mid. I'll say it like this. Yesterday was mid. There was something that I was hoping that would work out yesterday that didn't work out yesterday, and wasn't great. If you're in the Discord, you know what it is. Not the Discord, God. If you're in the Gilded, you know what it is. I don't really want to talk about it that much, but today is better. I slept, cleaned up a little bit. I will clean some more. But you know, we keep on. There are other things that are potentially on the front end. Kind of needed. I say mid because it evened out with some other things that happened entirely unrelated to that thing. It's good to have friends. And I'm gonna leave it. I'll leave it at that primarily. So yeah. So generally speaking, generally speaking, yeah, you gotta just hit a little bit of voice bites. I guess I'll be petty and say at least I don't need a voice changer. So there's that too. The context being that, not that it's bad to use voice changers necessarily, but the context being that Pirate Software apparently uses one. And I know that like a lot of people have been bagging on him anyway. But like on account of, I also feel like doing that because he's kind of just not. I don't mean beyond like the slot tube kind of stuff that he's been accused of, but like something else that was much more serious than that. I'm not going to get into here. It could be more petty. I could be. It's true, but that involves taking more energy than I want to spend, and nah, not here for that. I could be, though, you're right. But I think probably better served with just that right amount of it. So, all that said, the plan for today is I'll show off some stuff that I was working on with shootlanzer. I don't think I have anything that is immediately task related for shootlanzer that I can do. So I'll show off a little bit of some of the things I've been cooking. Right now, we are making plans for how to disseminate that in the how to disseminate the builds in the Munity Discord that we said we're going to be exclusive afterward. We're basically trying to figure it out a little bit. So, we'll get there. So yeah, I'm going to show off a couple tweaks that I was working on. And then we'll probably do some small dev stuff. And we're not going to go for like 3 hours necessarily. Yeah, we went pretty hard on Sunday. This is true. Also, just kind of like given the way But yeah, we did go pretty hard on Sunday, so I'm not gonna hit for the full 3 hours. I'm just gonna go to like 9 o'clock, and then that will pretty much um, that'll be pretty much about where we get to as far as that's concerned. So shoot Lancer stuff. So come over here, then just hang on. I gotta figure out where I left this window. No, let's test. Okay. Give me 1 second, y'all. I'm trying to remember where I put this thing. Okay. Good. I think I think I'm gonna just run back because I know that we had a stream before that we had a stream after Play NYC was over last week Wednesday on the 27th. I know that we did. I don't remember if I showed the new revival bar or anything that time, or if that's what we were programming that time, or if I worked on it afterward. I want to say that y'all haven't seen it yet, so it's going to be something that we're going to see in a minute. Okay, where the question is, where did I put the controller? Is literally sitting right there in front of me. Half of us have ADHD. It's finding controls again. That's fair. Okay. Let me go open up Fork also. I know I showed off the ultimate. I know I showed off the changes like ultimate laser and all that other stuff, but that's all. 27th last. Right, that was that one. Yeah, so it might have been some dash stuff, but I'm gonna start with the changes that I know I made very recently, and then if the other ones are familiar, then we'll go from there. Let's start from. Let's just start from the start, as it was, or as it were. Excuse me. Damn it! I thought I had it fixed. That's not. Hold on. There we go.
Ready? Swift.
So, one of the major things that I adjusted recently, or that was adjusted recently. Sorry, if you hear me say "I" and then stop and then backtrack a little bit, it's because I'm trying to work on doing a certain type of phrasing when I talk about the game, even it's one of those things where, essentially speaking, and I guess this is kind of important to talk about given the way that like bot tier theory tends to come up. I want to sort of emphasize whenever I'm talking about shootlanzer that this is a team effort. That's the important thing, right? Um, so I may occasionally catch myself to kind of like reiterate that in certain circumstances where it's like, no, this was like at least a team decision, or it may have been something I thought of in a particular case, but it's something that we agreed on, right? So I'm going to try to be more intentional about that. So if you hear me stop and go, no, I mean we, just that's part of that like reframing. Try to make sure that it's understood that it's like, no, this is like a team effort, even if there are things that like individually I might be doing, it's like a team effort sort of thing. So one of the major things that we did agree on based on some feedback that we got was that projectiles could stand to go a little bit faster. And this is why, okay, there we go. So, an important thing that I hadn't realized was initially a problem that I did fix recently was the parallax does in fact change speeds when you shift. Like the closer you get to the bottom of the screen, the faster the parallax goes, but I hadn't quite gotten that yet. That's something new. So aside from fixing the parallax speeds so that like, because if you go back and look at old footage of shootlanzer, even from like last week, you'll see that when Leona's flying in the top third of the screen, things really slow down and then it speeds up as you move further down. Turns out that I messed up some code I've been writing when doing the parallax speed changes. So now it happens to like move at the correct speed when you're up top versus down below. It is supposed to slow down some, but not like slow down a lot. It just slows down just a little bit. So aside from correcting that, a major change that I did just make very recently, that we agreed on to make very recently. A major change that we agreed to make very recently was the idea that your player bombs, and I think we're still trying to decide on whether or not we want this synergy to also apply with enemy bombs still, but your player bombs, when they touch an enemy, even if they haven't detonated yet, they will go off at that point. So it's one of those things where now, right, if you especially decide you're just going to get up in somebody's face, right, you can basically force the bomb to go off immediately. Aside from that, Leona's speed has been increased when she moves around by like another 100 units. That reminds me, I need to check something real quick, actually. Give me 1 second. I need to check something very important, and that would be how fast you move when you pop the ultimate booster. You need to do that. So let me go check that real quick, because that might have been something I forgot to do. Ha ha ha. Okay, so give me 1 second. I need to look for something important here, which is where I put the. I need to find where I put the code for the speed up. So we're going to go over to the player weapon real quick. We're going to open up that script. And I need to see where and what I did for the speed up. So drop bomb is fine. Ultimate functions, yep. Ah, okay. And then what? How do I use this here? Hang on a second. Okay. Okay. So then important architecture thing to talk about because past me did this, so I don't have to worry about it anymore, and I'm very happy about this. So conceptually in programming, right? There's this thing called there are these things called magic numbers, right? Let's say that when you're working on a code or whatever, and you're like, okay, right. I know for a fact that the number that works here that I like for example, the player's boost from. Hang on, I should rename this. This is player. I should name that more correctly. So, right? I could, if I wanted to, just replace this with the number 200, and then it's the same thing, right? But let's say that I'm like, okay, right. At some point, I want to take the current speed boost and multiply it by some other number further, right? I would have to do, okay, now I have to make sure that it's 200 when it's coming in at some point and make sure I multiply it correctly, all of other stuff, right? Or if I knew that I needed to use this exact number in multiple spots in the code for consistency's sake, for whatever reason, I have two options. I can either put 200 everywhere that I need to be referencing the speed boost for the player, hence a magic number, or I can just use a variable instead, and the variable is what has the initial value. So if I come over here, right, speed boost, I'm using the ultimate booster, I set it at a flat 200 over here, and here it is not a magic number because what happens is if I change it here in this variable, it changes it everywhere, right? And that makes my life a lot easier in many aspects. The same way that, for example, player speed is also a variable because now I know that my base player speed is whatever number I set it to here. As an example, this used to be 525 previously. One of the things that I got as a recommendation, one of the things that we got, I have to keep working on it. One of the things that we got as a bit of feedback was that Leona still feels like she's moving too slow. And following the specific rule that, generally speaking, we as a team sort of follow, it's not like a formal hard and fast rule, but it's sort of within the wheelhouse of how we do this. When you're getting feedback about a game from people who are playing it, right? A thing that I saw on Blue Sky, not Twitter, because I stopped going to Twitter a while ago. The thing that I saw on Blue Sky is that, hang on a second, I'm going to go pull up the tweet real quick because I know that I retweeted it at some point or reposted it and did a thing. So I'm going to go look at it and I'm going to go read it directly so that I'm not saying this, not talking out my butt because I forgot about the thing. don't want to do that. Okay, I phrased it in the tweet as in the post as my personal rule, but let me start from the start. Essentially speaking, there was a post going around on Blue Sky from somebody else that I follow that was basically a screen cap from a Discord server where the person was saying one more time, players are always right about how they feel, players may be wrong about why, players are always wrong about the solution, right? My personal sort of like the personal layer on top that I use and that also munity kind of like applies also past a certain point is something like this. It's not a hard and fast rule formally, but it plays a lot into the way that we make these decisions, right? Generally speaking, if one person brings up a specific thing, it's a coincidence. If two people do, then it's worth considering. If it's more than three, then it's something that we have to address, right? And the reason why I personally use that metric, and then that's sort of something that Munity sort of also informally does collectively, is mostly because, think of it like this, right? The idea is primarily that if one person makes notice of a thing, right? If one person takes notice of a thing, you know, it could be that it might be something that maybe they didn't get because you didn't tutorialize, because the tutorial didn't explain it, or some other thing, right? But it's one person. Two people is like, okay, if it's two separate people who, you know, don't necessarily like talk to each other, didn't talk to each other about the game and their experience with it, and it's like two people are experiencing it, it's like, okay, then that begins to get a little bit more like, all right, no, we got to actually think about that some, because two separate people can perceive that. Okay, that's worth noting. Three or more, it's like, okay, no. If this is something that's recurring among people who do not talk to each other about the game, about how it works, and they all are experiencing the same thing, it may not for all of them be for exactly the same reason, but it is definitely something that is worth noting at that particular point. And that is sort of the metric. That's both my personal metric as a designer and sort of like the informal one insofar as how Munity chooses to handle things, right? So, that in mind, the speed thing essentially came up twice. So it's one of those things where we were like, all right, we can try tweaking it up a little bit more to see how that goes. Similarly, all of the projectiles in the game that aren't like bombs all move faster now. Mostly because it was one of those things where one of the constant sort of like tugs that we've been having insofar as Leona herself is concerned is that a lot of times people express to us, oh, yeah, it feels like she's flying faster than her bullets, so you can like outpace them and then do what have you, right? Though actually, this makes me think of something that I might want to have to do in a little bit that I hadn't thought about until I just said that out loud.
Stage 1. Ready? Swift.
Alright, hold on. Oh, probably because of the skip. So yeah, every enemy in the game also fires their projectiles faster now, on top of only getting like a speed increase and the parallax fix. Ideally, we feel like that will sort of help alleviate some of that like sluggish feeling. Basically, bullet shot speed was almost doubled. It used to be like 600 units, now it's like 1100. The other major thing I'll demonstrate on the stage 2 boss with this, because it's kind of important.
Stage 2. Ready?
Hold on a second. Why is this yelling? What are you upsetting about? Okay. Hang on a second. Sorry, it's getting upset about a thing and I need to... Okay, line 96. Oh. Okay, so it's upset about something about this. Or it's like the player script. Okay. I see. I think I know how to fix that. Hang on a second. We're just gonna sneak in a little something here. It's not going to fix itself for a little bit, but or it may not actually have an effect until next time I start the game. But yeah, that was definitely a good idea. Hold on. Shootlanzer. I realize that the actual audio of the game is really loud, and so y'all probably can't hear me talking nearly as well. One of the things that we do want to look at some point is like a repass and rebalance of the audio stuff. That said, the bomb them in their face thing definitely is beginning to pay off. Alright. So, one of the things I want to demonstrate, I gotta wait for the Brigadier to give me another charge. So, one of the major changes that we also made fairly recently is that you can actually do a perfect dodge on enemy hitboxes as they pass through you. It used to be only projectiles, but mostly to compensate for the fact that, like, you know, the Brigadier does this now.
Stage clear.
Alrighty. So yeah, those are the major changes that have kind of come up as far as like shootlanzer is concerned, at least so far. So when we get around to doing the bleeding edge build in the actual shootlanzer Discord, it will have these changes and probably at least a couple more. I need to test one thing real quick to see if my little dirty fix from a minute ago actually worked or not, insofar as that's concerned. I have a couple things I want to experiment with in the small game to bring back to shootlanzer, so we should have something interesting come out of that today if things happen to go the way that I would like. All right, I keep forgetting that we have a chat screen now. I keep forgetting about that. All right, let's see if I fix this thing.
Stage.
Yep, that was it.
Ready.
I'm
Swift.
a genius. I'm a genius. All right, cool. Fix that error. Which probably means if I see other errors like that, then it's mostly just a matter of making sure that essentially before something. So the error I'm talking about, it's gone now, so you can't see it. But there was an error where the game was complaining about, like, hey, there's no, like, we can't access a disposed object, right? What does that mean? Well, the idea in Godot is that when you're switching between scenes, right, there are ways to get around this if you feel like it, but most of the time when you're switching scenes in Godot, right, unless you specifically go out of your way to do what's called additive scene loading, where essentially you have like a basic scene and then you load other assets in on top of it, which is useful in certain circumstances if you want to make sure that it's like, right, when the game starts, I want to have this scene as my base scene that has certain things in it, and then I just load in other scenes additively and then remove them additively as I need to, and then I don't have to track data a certain way. That is a valid way to build a game, right? The end result, though, is that there's a very special type of variable called a static variable. I'm going to go up to the top of player script here and demonstrate what it is, if I can find it. I just have to remember where I put it. Here, right? So, in C#, if we designate that a variable is static, I'm going to grab this, actually, I'm going to put it up here because this is the important part. If we designate that a variable is static, right? What this essentially means is that in C# in particular, it means that this variable is accessible simply by putting in the script, the name of the script that you're using it for, that you're trying to get it from, and then go from there, right? So as an example, over here, right? Player script.instance, this is what I'm talking about. So here's what was happening. When I was switching scenes, or when the game was switching scenes, the instance of the player script was still set to the old instance of Leona that got disappeared when I went, okay, no, we're going to switch scenes now. So all I really had to do was make sure that when the player script exits the tree, right? In other words, when the player has been removed from the current node that is serving as like the backbone. Let me phrase that differently. Godot is at its core basically composed of these things called nodes, right? So stage 2 over here is just a regular node. The enemy spawner itself is a marker 2D node. And under that marker 2D node, I have regular nodes that each define an individual wave of enemies. And each wave has a node 2D that contains the enemy spawn data, etc., right? This whole structure is called a tree. And so the idea is that if something enters the tree, it has just been added into the game. When something exits the tree, it has been removed from the game. So the idea here is that for the player script, when the player is removed from the right, when it's removed from the tree, which will include, oh hey, did I delete this node entirely from the tree? We call exit tree. Have I changed the scene that we are currently looking at as our main scene in the tree? We call exit tree, right? So all I have to do here is make sure that instance for the player script is set to null when we exit the tree. So all that means is that we get rid of the old reference to the player script once the player is no longer actively in the scene. And that stops the parallax manager from yelling about the instance not being the instance being to a disposed object, because now, right, we make sure that we clear out whatever the old reference to the old player instance was when the player leaves the scene, so that the script, that anywhere that's looking for a player script instance is not looking for the old reference to the player that is no longer there. That's the idea. I love the node. Yeah. The thing about like Godot's node structure is that while it takes a little bit of getting used to from a certain perspective, once you understand the way that it works, it is very, very good for just putting together and compositing the way you want certain things to happen. It's really, really useful for that. And I like it a lot. And I think it's very helpful. Especially because there are a lot of circumstances, right? There are a lot of circumstances under which if you just need here we go. If there are circumstances under which you need okay, dang it, brain, come on. Make it work. Right, if there's a specific functionality that you need for something, odds are very high that rather than having to write a whole script for it, there's a pretty good chance that Godot already has a node for it. As an example, most of the time, I do not have to write a bunch of code to handle timer functions very much. A lot of the time, what I can do, not always, sometimes I have to do it the old-fashioned way and manually create a timer that is not just fire and forget. But a lot of the time, with the way that Godot works, even if I have to do it in code, I can actually literally generate a timer node to count down to some value, or the count down over some period of time, just by doing very specific code things, and then I don't have to like actually track, okay, hey, if the timer exceeds this value, then you need to stop. Like that kind of code, I can skip over most of the time either by making a timer node in code or making a timer node in the scene and then going from the in a particular scene and then going from there. And that's one of the things that Godot in particular kind of like excels at in this particular instance case, where it's like, right, really the only thing that you have to do is I'm switching over to this small game now because that's most of the stuff I wanted to show off for shootlanzer. And if there's anything else that needs doing for shootlanzer, don't think it's tonight. So let me switch this over, because the thing I would like to do with the small game in particular is that right. So with the small game in particular, a thing that I am thinking about right now that I would like to experiment with, I don't know if Godot has a node for this, but let's find out. Y'all can't see the node creation window because for reasons. Or I guess I can maybe change the... I wonder. I might be able to change this capture window now to something else. Hold on. Okay, no, I don't think it... Yeah, it doesn't quite work the way that I would like. Where there's certain pop-up windows that OBS can't capture, much as I wish that it could. Okay, that's cool. So it does have the thing that I was hoping it would have, which is useful. I need to go Google something real quick, though. So give me a second. Let me Google something real quick, because now I am curious. But, let's see. Okay. Cool. Alrighty. So, you may look over here. It's a little hard to see because the window text is really tiny. But, GPU Particles 2D is the node that I just made. So we're going to rename this to Rush Particles. Look over here. It says a material to process the particles is not assigned to node behavior is imprinted, I think it said, right? So what the heck is a GPU Particles 2D? It is a node that, according to what I am reading and how I understand it, it is a node that emits particles. This is the simplest way to put it. It's a node that emits particles. Particles, in this case, meaning little tiny images that oftentimes get used for a variety of effects in video games. So in this case, I'm just going to experiment with some particle system stuff tonight because I realized that Godot has this natively, and my main line of thought was yeah, actually, this works. We can do this. This will be good. For my Final Fantasy 14 players in chat, basically, you know how sometimes you'll draw like an ultimate weapon or something, and it will have like those little streaming, glowing orbs and stuff. That's the kind of stuff that particle effects can usually do. Just to make that clear. So this is the process material it's talking about. So we're going to do a new particle process material. And as you can see now, right, we just have these funny little things dropping straight down. Right? I'm literally learning about this as we're going. So let me see here. Texture. I don't think I have very much that I can use. I guess I can just use the circle timer. And that will technically do. You can also animate. You can also like use an animation flip book, so to speak. So if you have something that is like an explosion effect and you would like it to appear as a set of particles, that can also be a thing that can be done apparently. But we're not really doing that right now. Not worried about it. Let's work with this though. Lifetime. Lifetime determines how long an individual particle is on screen, right? So maybe instead of just 8 particles, we do like 24. So amount is how many. So we have 24 for that. Pre-processing. Nah, we don't need that. Interpolate towards that. I don't know if we need to do that either. Oh. That's useful. Okay, John. Visibility vect is... Okay. Let's reset that for right now. Local chords. Yeah, we want to leave local chords off. Draw order. No, lifetime is fine. Okay. So a lot of the stuff in this section up here is mostly just about like setting lifetime and things like that. in order, I think, to actually control the way that this works, we now mostly have to work on things in the actual process material, right? So, hang on, set that position, mission shape offset, so we can pull this up to make it pull upward. Okay, this is interesting. You need an initial velocity greater than 0. Okay. So that, let's see here. Oh. Okay, here we go. And as we increase the spread, it goes that way. Okay, this makes sense. In this case, we don't want them to be affected by gravity, so we can come in here and turn off the gravity. Scale over velocity. Okay, I see. So basically, the other idea behind the way that these things work is that as I add in curves, you can't see some of these, unfortunately, because some of these are pop-up windows that don't quite, that don't show up the way that they should, right? As I add in curves and the like to certain aspects of this thing, I can cause as I add in curves and also just adjust the minimum and maximum of things, and like this curve here, right? I can make it so that there isn't like a very big fall off in terms of like in terms of the scale, or I can have it more or less stay relatively constant, things like that. And mostly I think the actual bounds of what changes is mostly affected by what I put in as the minimum value, and then I slide the curve around to change like how drastic the change is in turn. So I think this will do fine. Alright, we're gonna leave turbulence turned off because I don't think that does anything. Collision doesn't collide. Sub-emitter. I don't think we need a sub-emitter for this that I can immediately think of. Okay, perfect. And then that's finished. I know the ad should be finishing up right now. Here we go, color curves. There we go. Color ramp. There we go. So, by messing with the regular color as well as the color ramp, yeah, now I can make it so that without having like an alpha curve or whatever, I can just very easily make it so that like it fades out. Like each particle kind of fades out as it goes along, right? So this does, I think. This will do. So I'm going to tell it to stop emitting. I think we pretty much have that on, right? So basically, all that's going to happen is that, essentially speaking, I want to make sure that it's emitting. Oh, one other thing I guess I should do. I need to probably also figure out if there's like a good way to flip this. Probably not. I think it's a thing where I have to like manually change the direction depending on which way I'm facing. But that's a whole other can of worms. So I'm going to come over to the player real quick. We have nodes. Alright, here's what I'm going to do. And it turns out that I may not even need this, and that I may be going overkill on the effects anyway. But this was worth actually being able to experiment with. This is worth being able to experiment with in terms of actually learning a thing here. We're gonna do export public GPU particles 2D rush particles, because basically speaking, all right, y'all can't see this over here. Let me fix the Visual Studio Capture. So what I did over here that y'all couldn't see until a second, that y'all couldn't see, right here is my reference to where the rush particles are, because the idea is that I'm going to come over now in the player. I'm going to open up the player state machine. I'm going to go over to this rush right here. And over here, I'm going to do player script ref dot rush particles dot emitting is true, and then when we leave, it's going to be false. And I think the only other thing I want to do from here is make sure that where's the after image? I think I might be spawning in the after images manually. So for visibility, no, not visibility, I need ordering. Yeah, we're going to just do -2. Well, no, I can literally just go look up the after image and be sure. So after image.tscn. The ordering for this after image is what? Ordering, it's already at 0. Okay, which means that the particles should be fine at -1. So I come over here and I just do -1. Then we're good. Hey Vinka, how you doing? Alright. Now let's try this out in a level and see what this looks like. The main thing I imagine is that the only thing that we are definitely not going to have working correctly is that the particles won't. Whoops, I forgot to fix one thing. It got angry because there's a thing here. It says no reference exception, object reference not set to an instance of an object. What does that mean? If I go back over to the player, I never put the rush particles in place over here in the inspector. Now that I did that, it shouldn't be so angry. It's like telling somebody to go get something out of a box, and then the box is empty, and they come back and they yell at you like, the box is empty. Why did you tell me to go do this? There's nothing in here. That's kind of the principle behind how this works. Alright, I didn't put in controller support yet. Okay, let's see here. Okay, never mind. I think we maybe managed... Let me see something here. Yeah, no, not quite. Still, if I pause it, you'll see that the emitter, if you're looking carefully at the emitter, hopefully you're doing well, Vinka. You can see that the emitter is not actually changing the direction that it's emitting in. It's just that because it's not... So we have to basically just make sure that this flips accordingly before we started emitting. I think I might be able to do a thing with this, but I may not have access to the... I may have to do a little trickery to make this work. So here's what we're going to do. So player script f dot rush particles dot... I don't think I can get access to the direction somehow. Let me see something here. What's this thing called again? Come over to the player. Rush particles. This is the process material. Okay, so let's see. Okay. Hang on a second. Sorry, y'all. I'm just trying to figure out... I guess I could just Google it real quick. Hang on. Godot change particle emission direction. That's from 2021. Okay, that's not helpful. Okay. Yeah, this one's going to be tricky. I guess, because if I do that, and then I rotate it 180 degrees, you know what? Let's try that, actually. Player script f dot rush particles dot. Okay, so that works. Let's see. Player script ref dot current facing equals 1. 180, 0. Okay. I'll explain what that does in a minute, assuming that I made it work correctly. Assuming that I made it work correctly, I'll explain what that does in a minute. We're going to find out shortly. Okay. Almost, but not quite. I did this backwards. Do it like this. I think I got it, though. And in retrospect, that makes an immense amount of sense given the specific things I'm working with. Good. And now what about the other side? Yeah. All right. Yeah, we can work with that. I think the only problem with that rotation is that it might be causing... Let me see something here. I'm going to turn on emitting real quick. And then I just want to see something. Rotation, if we do 180. Yeah, that's what I thought. 0. Okay. If we unlink the scale, and I do... Okay. That also works. All right. I think we can do it that way, because that is probably better than the rotation thing. So here's what we're doing. We're going to do... Okay, they're not decomposable. All right, so let's do it like this. We're going to do vector 2 new scale equals vector 2.1. New scale dot x is going to be equal to player script ref dot current facing, and then we're going to do player script ref dot scale equals new scale, player script ref dot rotation degrees is equal to 0. The reason why I'm doing this is because there's something else I'm going to be doing later. But essentially speaking, this is the thing that I was trying to just like test out just to make sure that this works correctly. So the basic idea is that by changing the scale of the X for the emission system, it controls what direction the particles go in without me having to try to like do a bunch of other silly workarounds, right? So when the player is turned to the right, the current facing is set to 1, and then the scale of the emitter is also set to 1. And when the scale of the emitter is set to 1, it's acting as if the player is moving toward the right and emits in that direction. So if I pause, we're good. Now, to test this, if I turn around and I do this... Hang on a second. Oh. Damn it, I wasn't paying attention. So, I made a mistake. For these two, right here, I forgot to do something very important. You see how I said player script ref dot scale should change to that, and player script ref rotation degrees? This is the problem. I said for the player to do these things, but it's not the player whose scale and rotation I want to change. It is the rush particles that I want to change. Now it should be fine. I wasn't paying attention when I was typing that. And I left out the very important thing of saying I need the particles to do that. So as you see here, the particles, because the scale is 1, are emitting backwards this way. I turn around, I rush. See, the particles are doing the same thing this way. So I may not even keep this necessarily, but I wanted to get a better sense of the way that particle systems work in Godot, because now, in particular, there are two things I want to do. First of all, I'm going to make sure that this rush particles thing, I need to, yeah, like your Z index needs to be way lower, bud. Get you, get in the back. Get all the way in the back. Um, get you all the way in the back. But yeah, hopefully, Vink, you're doing well. Let's see here. Yeah, much better. So now, the other thing that we can do from this point, because it's great that we have that, right? Now, similarly, what I can do is, so let me make some notes here. The main thing that I haven't been doing with this game is that I have not been commenting my code. And so at some point, probably on like a rainy day, I'm going to sit down and just literally go line by line and comment everything. I should have been doing it as I was going along, but I haven't been because the code has been relatively straightforward. Now I get to suffer. All right. So here's what we're going to do at this particular point. Now, I don't even have to. Here's the nice part, right? Provided that let me just make sure that I have this rotation angle correct, though. No, we're going to want negative 90. So let's see here. Okay, so here's how we can do this. I can just duplicate this, and then we're going to call this up rush particles. Here's the thing, though. Because I duplicated this, if I go to the process material, it's going to be a copy of what was already there. So I'm going to hit make unique so that this way I can do this without causing any, I can adjust these without causing any issues. So, accelerations. No, gravity is fine. Um, particle flags spawn. I think it is velocity. Cool. So we're just going to do instead 0. And now we're going to do yeah, we're just going to do 1 over here. And now I think we just need to adjust the angle, I think, right? Time, nope. Drawing, nope. Trails, process material. It's one of these. I'm trying to remember. Okay, cool. Yeah, that's fine. Now, so now the only thing I need to do is get the angle to work with me here. I could just manually, I guess I could just try to manually turn the actual node and see what happens here. Okay, better. But let me keep looking at the actual documentation to see if I can figure this out. Okay, so particle flags. We want to mess with the spread, maybe? Let's see. Yeah, like I'm literally just kind of like messing around with this to try to see if I can figure out how to get this to do the thing that I would like. So trails. Okay, let's undo the rotation here. Okay. Process material. Particle flags. No. Spawn. Position. Okay. Not quite. I just wanted to give me a nice. So, all right. Um, Hang on a second. Velocity. Initial velocity. Okay. So we have no velocity there. No direction here. Accelerations, gravity is... Okay, so my main question is mostly... Okay, cool. So now my main question is, why am I also getting... Okay, so my main question is, why am I also getting emissions going in the other direction? I mostly just wanted to give me a nice sort of like conical outward display. Okay, I guess I can try this real quick actually. We're just gonna do a new one altogether. Oh wait a minute, that's why. I'm so silly. It's because this one has been on this whole time and I couldn't Damn it! I was sitting here going, why are they both going at the same time? Because I never stopped to turn off the other one. It was already doing the thing I needed it to do, and I just couldn't tell because they were both on. Go figure. Alright. I was like, why? Well, like, why am I getting both directions? Because like you left the other emitter on 5-head. Good job. All right. And the other reason, right? And then, damn it. Okay, I need to be very careful about which particles I'm working with because I was already messing with the one where like messing with that other stuff doesn't do anything because I wasn't paying attention to which ones I was editing. This is the only thing that you have to be careful about. It's the equivalent to put this into perspective for like people who are maybe like artists in here. This is the equivalent of you fucking around with things on the wrong layer in an image editing program and then going, but why isn't the image changing? Essentially, it's the same thing, except I was just pointing at the wrong object. Okay, this should be fine now because those particles are still emitting off that side. Uprush particles are going this way. All right, excellent. Good. So I'm gonna make sure that this stops emitting. I'm winning now, Stubby, to answer your question. I saw you asking. I'm winning now. And we're gonna do uprush particles. And now it's very simple, really. We're gonna come over to our player state machine. We're gonna come to our uprush state. It's very simple. In the uprush state, we're gonna make sure that we player script ref dot uprush particles dot emitting equals true, and then on exit emitting is false, and then we just need to make sure that I go back. Well, I just have to build this real quick, and then we come back over here and make sure that I set the uprush particles in their little box here, and we're good. And now if I go back to the level and we play, yep, there we go. Good. Now the only other thing I probably want to do is make sure that when the player is defeated, that the... So over here in the dead state, very simple. You just want to make sure that over here, I can just do... So, here's a major thing, right, from a code perspective. If I go over here and I do... In this case, it's fine, I guess. So player script ref dot rush particles dot emitting equals player script ref dot uprush particles dot emitting equals false. So this long line of code here basically just makes sure that when I'm dead, I just stop the particle emissions for both the regular rush and the uprush, just to make my life a lot easier. Just completely stops. However, I also now have the opportunity, now that I know how these nice GPU particles work, we can just do a nice little thing over here. And what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to rename this to enemy explosion particles. Because here's the thing, right? Like, if I wanted to, I could like just go and just make a new one of these every single time that I wanted to do this. I could do that. Or I can turn this into a branch for the explosion particles. And I'll just do scenes. I know y'all can't see it. Effects. We're going to do enemy explosion particles. And we're going to save it as its own little scene. Because what I can do now is, knowing that this is like enemy explosion particles, right? I can just sit down and do like, let's maybe do this one. And then what we're going to do here is process material. Cool. We've already got a new one of its own. But one thing we're going to do is explosiveness. I set that to 1. We don't need fixed seed right now, I don't think, because we're not going to be using that for anything else. Trails, process material, okay. 3 seconds. Hang on. It looks like it's only doing 1 now. No, 30 is good enough. And I don't think anybody really notices. It may just... Alright, let's see here. Spawn. Okay, velocity. Okay, there we go. It's because we didn't have any velocity going. That's much better. Now accelerations, gravity, we're going to just turn that off. Good. And now we can probably cut back the number of particles. Like, we can do like 50 maybe, and that's fine, right? And then we're going to come down to display, color curves. Color is white. We're going to put in a new color ramp though. And y'all see that it, like with the color ramp in place, it goes from black to white. So what we're going to do is just, we're going to change this a little bit. We want this color to be, white. And then we want the other color at the end to also be white, but we're just going to change the alpha. Yeah, well, I did it in reverse by accident. So let's just grab that and switch these. And if I want them to stay solid for longer, I can just move this over, right? But I think this is good. I just need to adjust the lifetime down. There we go. And we're just gonna do no, we can still leave that one. And then we'll do one for the randomness. And then we're good from there. And just like maybe 20. No, 50 is a nice round number. And then yeah, we can just push that gradient. If I push the gradient a little bit over to the left, it causes it to like go away faster. I can just program the hitbox bigger than 16 by 16 RP. Yay! Do you want better? You are quite welcome. So I'm going to mess with this curve texture. I'm going to mess with this curve a little bit and see if we can't get us a nice funny little shape here. And we just, there we go. That nice little alpha curve. Yeah, the alpha curve is a nice way of making sure that like you get a nice little fade out effect on top of everything else. Turbulence. Nah, don't need that. Scale, yeah, I think we want to do this. We're going to do so we get a little more size variance in terms of like the actual we get a little bit of like an actual size variance in terms of the way that these things curve. These particles are for when an enemy is destroyed, or when like an enemy, specifically like when an enemy hits a wall or a surface and gets rid of themselves. It's like a poof, basically. That's the plan. So we're gonna just slightly adjust the curve down so it's like here. Okay, and I think this should more or less be pretty good as far as this is concerned. Yeah. Specifically, as far as enemies in this game are concerned, it's not for shootlanzers, it's for something else. As far as enemies in this game are concerned, it's for when they actually like collide against a surface, because that's when they actually get defeated, essentially speaking, and that's what I'm planning for right now. So yeah, I don't think the flatness doesn't spread is more or less taking over for that. And the velocity is only going to be positive because we already have the spread doing that thing. I think maybe the only thing I want to mess with is maybe the emission shape. I don't know if that's going to actually change very much. So process material, spawn, particle flags, nope, spawn, position, emission shape, here we go. Sphere. BRB? Okay. Hang on a second, I want to see the emission shape. And a ring or cylinder. Okay. The only problem is that it's not letting me visualize what the emission ring looks like, so it's very difficult. Yeah, from a point, I think it's probably just fine enough. And then maybe one shot. Yeah, there we go. Much better. All right, perfect. So now here's the only thing that we really need to do. Script. Create new folder. Effects. No, we already have one. Okay. Effects. In the effects folder, we're going to create a new script and we're going to call it enemy explosion particles.cs, and this is going to inherit GPU particles 2D. Right? GPU particles 2D. Yep. Create. And then over here, we're going to make sure that the script that this has is GPU, nope, enemy explosion particles.cs. Click on that, get it to open up over here. Okay, cool. Public override ready. And then we're going to do okay. So this script is very simple and it only does the one thing, but that one thing that it does is also very simple. When now I'm going to set this up so that once an enemy self-destructs, right? So over here in the basic enemy script, okay, we've got region for exported variables. Nope, I want to come over here. We're going to do it in the actual base enemy script because that's where we need this thing to be. Export packed. We want packed scene explosion effect packed scene. And then in destroy self, we're going to do instantiate. We're going to do GPU particles 2D explosion new explode particles equals what's it called? Explosion effect vaccine dot instantiate GPU particles 2D. Good. New explode particles dot. We're gonna just do get tree dot boot dot add child. Two things though. New explode particles dot global position equals global position. Gonna do that. And okay, cool. And so now over here, it's gonna do this. And then for the bird, I think we need to do the same thing, right? The bird script. Yep, so for the bird, we also need to just do a quick load and throw in the enemy explosion particles. Bird doesn't have a spin out state, so it can't do that yet because I have to go back and program that. For various reasons. I'm not programming that for a minute because I also have to do some sprite work in order to make that work because when I did the sprites for this initially, I didn't make a KO sprite for the bird and I don't have the original files anymore. Okay, so on the one hand, we're not getting an error, which is good. Oh, right, that's why. I'm so silly. I forgot to do the most important part. So over here in the enemy script, after I add the child to scene, I need to do new explode particles dot emitting is true. I forgot that I have to like manually make them start emitting. Sorry, got distracted. I'm trying to figure out if I want to get a paid program for arting. Oh yeah, I was looking over in the Discord while you were musing over that. You already know my recommendation as far as that goes. Though, if it's like straight up drawing, Clip Studio Paint is relatively good, but Clip Studio is kind of weird. So, Affinity, if you're looking for something that's really close to Photoshop directly, Affinity is pretty good about that. There are a couple of things that are different, but yeah, Affinity, any of like the temporary art that you see me make for shootlanzer or for anything else, if I had to like just throw something together in terms of like even like the particles that I'm using here. Oh right, I need to fix. There's the one thing I did want to particle flags. Nope, it's velocity. Nope. Welcome back, Vinka. Where the heck is the thing I'm scale? Here we go. I think this is what I wanted. Yeah, because the original one is a little too big. So we're gonna do 0.5 to 0.5. And then, yeah, it's much better. Because the thing is that the original sprite for the particles is really big. So I want the starting scale, like the minimum is 0.25 and the maximum is 0.5. It should give us a nice little variation of scale sizes between those for the explosion particles in a way that looks a little different. Okay, so that works now. That is doing the thing it's supposed to do, which is good. Okay. Now let's double check. Because the main reason why the particles weren't playing initially is because I forgot to tell them to emit after they got added to the scene. So I was like, why isn't it working? It's like, because you didn't tell the particles to play after the thing happened. Yeah, there we go. So it's a little slow. It's a little slow. So what I may want to do actually is that rather than having it happen so here's what I'm going to do. I'm gonna grab this code and I'm gonna do public void make explosion particles. And it's just a part of the base enemy script so that any enemy can do this. So now what we're gonna do is, so over here in the blockhead state squashed. So right here we're gonna do enemy script ref dot make explosion particles. So we're doing it this way because the thing is that the self-destruct function that I was making it go into previously, that self-destruct function doesn't happen until it's like basically literally leaving the scene. So if I want to have it happen at the point of, oh, this enemy has made impact against something solid that killed it, better to do it in the state where it gets to like that, right? Because then it's a little bit more accurate as to where a little bit. Because of some shenanigans with the way that like the blockhead sprites are arranged, it will be a little bit off center from where they actually hit. But that's okay. And then for the bird, I haven't done the other stuff yet. Cute game, looks a bit like Nasu from Yume Nikki. Yeah, this is I wanted to just do like a small game to throw up on my itch page. I wanted to like just like a small game to throw up on my itch page to put out for like maybe $5 or so. And I was like, okay, I am going to just keep speaking of releasing games, did I mention that I was invited by Steam to my game? We take those. For people who don't know, you do actually have to pay Steam money in order to get Steam to put your game up on Steam. The payment price is like, the last I looked, it's something like $100 USD. Yeah. It's like $100 USD to put things up on Steam. So the fact that Minka got that waived, especially given that that when we're not talking USD, the price is spiked by 7 times. We take that. That's good. We take that. We take those. That's the good shit. Get in. But yeah, so, and this is one of those things that, for my part, right, sometimes good things happen to me. I'm happy, honestly. I would like my fellow game developers to continue to get those good breaks, because, Sam, but yeah, like my general thing from a personal perspective is that like this is one of the things about Steam that, okay, I'm trying to be very careful about this and how I talk about this. One of the things that I think is notably very excluding about Steam is the fact that you do have to pay that much to get your game on there. And given that their curation of the things that are on there, just from a more general perspective, because I know that right now we have all like the collective shout and payment processor thing. I know that that's all really meant. Damn it, ads every time, right as I'm about to get up on my soapbox. But yeah, I'll keep going, and then I'll recircle my points after the ads are over. Once you're in, yeah, and that's the thing, right? Like that's the part that nobody tells you about, like releasing on Steam, right? Because essentially speaking, if you're gonna release on Steam, there are, I don't know to what degree this is entirely true, so I'm speaking very carefully about this, but my general understanding is that there are certain API hooks, right? There are certain API hooks that you have to set up in your game to interface with Steam. And making sure that whatever engine that you're using, or if you're not using an engine, if you roll it yourself, that you have the protocols written for communicating with Steam, especially if you're trying to do stuff like have trading cards in your game or things like that. That can all be kind of a pain if you don't prepare for it accordingly. I have never been in a position to have my games out on Steam, so I have not had that experience of working with the Steamworks API in that fashion. But even if I don't think it's mandatory to have trading cards in your Steam game, you still have to be able to have API hooks for things like, what if somebody does like the little input to open up like the Steam overlay while they're playing your game? You need to have your game communicate with the API for that. For those situations, you need to have it communicate with the API for things like achievements and all that other kind of stuff, right? And so that, if you're not prepared for what that yeah, like if you're not actively prepared for that, you wind up but yeah, like the general thing I was saying over the break for over the ad break, who missed it, is that the main thing for Vinka managing to not have to like pay that 700 in their local currency, right? Aside from that, the thing that Vinka was also saying that is also true is that the protocol stuff that that she's talking about is also stuff like, hey, if you're going to do achievements in your game, you need to be able to like actually wire up your game to properly interact with the Steamworks API so that it can register, oh, this is an event where an achievement was made. What achievement is it? All that other kind of stuff, right? And achievement tracking, I'm putting it like this. From the perspective of even just doing achievement tracking in your game that is separate from Steam stuff, getting that set up can also be, depending on how you track that information, it can be a pain in the neck. And I know this because there is a platform that I was working on, that I've worked on stream before, called Viral Core Busters, and it used to have, it doesn't right now, because I think I wanted to sort of like feel out the basic system interactions again, right? In that game, for example, it's a thing like, oh, okay, if you're able to make it to this from this checkpoint to this checkpoint in X amount of time, right? Then we'll evaluate that and give you a result, right? But in order for that to work, I had to then track, okay, right. Just that idea of if you make it from this checkpoint to the next checkpoint within a certain amount of time, you get this reward. That requires you flagging the point at which you hit the last checkpoint in terms of time, and then the current time when you hit the actual checkpoint, subtract it, and take that result and use that to evaluate whether or not that it did the thing, right? And basically speaking, making achievements for games is essentially that kind of stuff scaled up. So you have to have that system working in the base game first, then figure out how to communicate to. And Steam provides what's called the Steamworks API, where it has a set of protocols for interfacing with Steam, so you can let Steam know when this thing happened or when it did. I don't think it's a requirement for you to have. I don't remember for sure because I haven't looked into it like this, and I admit that. This is me being upfront and honest with you all about that. I do not know for sure if it is a requirement. Yeah, this will let you know when you unlock the extra stage right on the game. Right. So the Steamworks API that I'm talking about, for other people who don't know this thing, right, is essentially speaking the code hooks and the like that Steam provides to you as a developer, so that if you want to have things like, yeah, I want to have achievements, you have to hook into the Steamworks API in order to do that, and make sure that your game essentially sends a message via the Steam API to go, hey, this achievement was achieved, right? And all this other kind of stuff. I don't think it is mandatory for you to have achievements in your game for Steam in order for that to work. But essentially speaking, right, if you want to do it, it means that your game internally has to be able to track the things that are required for whatever achievement or achievements you want to include. And then it has to be able to speak to the Steamworks API and go, hey, go trigger this thing in your client side to tell the player this happened and that they have this achievement, and display it on their profile and all the other stuff, right? And what I was saying is that even doing an internal achievement system for your game, it's not impossible, but like any other thing, you have to spend time sort of like planning out how to track these things accordingly and go from there. How to make sure, for example, that you save your that you also like have the information saved about like you save it locally, for example, so that if you have a local achievement list for whatever reason, your player can go open up some in-game achievement looking thing and see that, and it's like, oh, it didn't reset in the middle, right? There are all there are all of these like little things that go into accommodating that sort of thing, and making things work with the Steamworks API can be even more complicated in a lot of aspects, right? You got to think these things out. Excuse me. So, in this particular case, this game is going out on itch. I want to do at least local high score tracking. I don't necessarily feel the need to go like, yeah, I want to do like high score tracking with like a big net play leaderboard. So don't really want to do that. As it is, I don't even know if we're going to have more than one stage. Like I said, I want to keep it small, because one of the things that me alone tend to fight with a lot when it comes to doing video games is that what I will get caught out with the most often a lot of the time is that my biggest demon is scope creep. My biggest demon in this sort of situation is always scope creep. But yeah, so really, that was the only thing I wanted to sort of experiment with today. Just particle systems, feel it out, see how that goes. They work fine, which is good. It means there are a couple of things that I can like experiment with from there. But all right, y'all. I deeply appreciate y'all, but it is about that time for us to be on that dusty trail because it's 9 o'clock, and I wasn't planning on going over tonight because I went way over on Sunday. And I am trying to be better about that sort of thing. So thank y'all for coming by. I deeply appreciate it. Here's the usual stuff. Ignore the blog stuff. Once I get sorted out as far as job stuff goes, I think I'm going to be moving my blogs over to Ghost because that will be a lot easier to just like sit down and write stuff for. Thank you, Nightbot, for doing the that one, but I'll get to that in a minute. Stream VODs are up on YouTube. Ko-Fi if you want to support me in the stream but don't want to give money to Amazon or to Jeff Bezos. Throne is anonymous gift giving for either home office supplies or apartment stuff. You can also crowdfund some of the things that I put up on there if I have it enabled so that you don't have to like pay for the whole thing all on your own. My card has my social media links on there, but really I'm mostly active on this guy. If you don't mind making a Roblox account, you don't have to actually use it to play Roblox. You can join us on Guilded. I prefer it over Discord just because, like, Discord, there are things that Discord makes you pay for that Guilded does not make you pay for, so I kind of prefer that. Right. Nightbot has also directed you over to munity.games, which is where we, the team working on shootlanzer, kind of like hang our hats. You can join our Patreon free or paid. If you want to be able to play the bleeding edge builds for shootlanzer once they're available, you'll want to join the shootlanzer Discord. There should be links to that on the main website. If not, hit me up on like the Guilded or whatever, and I'll get you an invite to there if that's a place you want to be. I think it should also be on our itch page for the shootlancer demo, so by all means go over there too. That's pretty much all I got. Stream schedule this week. Either I am going to start Fighting Friday early this Friday, or I am going to not have it. I have a thing at 8 p.m. on Friday, and normally I do stream from like 6 to 9. So either I'll do like 5 to 7:30, or more likely, like, we skip it. I don't know. I'm sort of feeling it out. With the way that my brain works, I sometimes have to just be like, no, we can't do the thing that day, so that I don't get wrapped up in what I'm doing and forget to do it. I deal with that a lot. So Friday is like a 50-50. Either we're going to start early, or more than likely I'm just going to cancel and we're not going to bother. So that I have time to do a couple other things on Friday. Sunday, 5 p.m. Eastern time, and I'm going to try to start on time on Sunday this time. Sunday, 5 p.m. Eastern time, more Tales of Vesperia Definitive Edition. I think we are pretty much rapidly closing in on the end of Act 2 out of the 3 acts in Tales of Vesperia. So please look forward to it. Next week, Friday, is either more small game... Sorry, next week, Wednesday, is either more small game stuff, more shootlancer stuff, or both, depending on how some things go from here. All right. Thank y'all for coming by. Deeply appreciate it. We're going to raid somebody. Let me just see who we have eligible to go raid before I forget. Not PT, because we went to go see them recently, so we can't do that again for a little while. I do need to still go over to their chat for other reasons, but I have no interest in iShow speed. Don't do this to me. Yeah, Prez is, and I know we didn't raid anybody last time, so yeah. We're gonna go raid the President Noir. Still doing his push to partner. And Prez is a friend of the channel, so we're gonna go hang out with him. Currently, he's doing what looks like retro games run. I don't know what retro game he's playing right now. I need to look and double check what the title is. Skulljagger is what it's called. So Super Nintendo retro games right now. Skulljagger is something that he's playing. So we're gonna go hang out with him. Stay safe, wash your hands, wear a mask. If you go outside, be excellent to each other, not to bigots, racist, turf, sexist, anti-queer folks, or fascists. Your reminders: Black Lives Matter, trans rights, and reproductive rights are human rights. Palestine, Sudan, the Congo, and New Caledonia, and Haiti must all be free. None of us are free till we're all free. Look out for each other. Whether it's like doing stuff out in your community, looking after the people that you can look out for and that you care about. Whatever you can do is just do what you can do, is basically what I'm saying. Deeply appreciate y'all. I'll see y'all whenever I see y'all. Take care. Enjoy Skulljagger and whatever other games Pez managed to get through tonight. And I'll catch y'all on the flip side. Deuces.